Hello and welcome to another discussion in the SF Masterworks reading group. We just lost Layla. What? Anyway, she'll come back hopefully. We are working our way through the SF Masterworks in the order they were published as Masterworks. We read one book a month. This discussion group, as most things we do on Patreon, is open to anybody interested. I think we have maybe one more spot that we can fill on this. And yeah, if you're interested in joining us for any of these, dipping in and out, or just talking to us about these books on the forum, please check out the Patreon forum. Excuse me. That's where we do all our planning. Should have probably mentioned the book before all that spiel. Today's book is going to be Timescape by Gregory Benford. That's what we're going to talk about today. The books for the next 3 months are going to be More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon for January, Man Plush by Frederick Pohl, who is a repeat author for February. Theodore Sturgeon is the first time, I think, for the series. And then one more repeat author with A Case of Conscience by James Blish for March. Once again, if you'd like to join us for any of these, please check out the Patreon forum. We will now do introductions and then get into Timescape. Susanna, could you kick us off?
Hello, my name is Susanna Imaginariu. I'm a writer and no longer a YouTuber, sadly. So I'm the author of Timelessness and other books, strange mythological stuff. And I like to read sci-fi. I write fantasy, but I like to read sci-fi mostly, so for whatever reason.
Am I next?
Jared?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. I am on the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and the Speculation podcast, as well as other podcasts on page chewing, including film chewing and panel chewing, comics and film. Yeah. Layla.
Oh, I'm Layla Ghoshi, writer, editor of Validity Magazine. Have a slight cold today, so. Chris?
Yes, my name's Chris Moen. I'm from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel. Well, I mean, say that, but I don't post any videos. So debate whether that still qualifies. I have a bit of a cold as well, Layla, so I can join you. In fact, like most of the Western world, I think I've had a cold for about 3 or 4 weeks at this stage, and
Wow.
it's not going away. But yes, I'm also part of the Speculative Speculations podcast, film tune podcast that Jared was talking about, and just generally in page tune.
Very nice. So let's talk about Timescape. What did we think? Some high-level thoughts?
I'll go first since I messed up the introduction. I kind of forgot that I no longer have a YouTube channel, so I need to come up with a better introduction, and I wasn't very good at improvise. Anyway, it's been almost a month since I read this, so I had higher level thoughts, but now just thoughts. Mostly at the beginning, I was like, this book, it's too clever, or I'm not clever enough for it. I couldn't quite tell where the science ended and the fiction began, if that makes sense. Which was fine. I'd just assume everything was fiction and just went from there, because I couldn't understand a lot. Most of the explanations here of the physics, that all that went over my head. Just I don't know. But I didn't care, and I didn't need to care, because I love the characters. I love the idea, how it was written. It's very unusual. I mean, I'm not used to reading hard sci-fi. When I say I like sci-fi, it's more like space opera. But my idea of hard sci-fi is that it's quite dry, just a lot of science, a lot of equations going about and theories. And this was almost philosophical. It had all that, but because it had such a great character, lots of great characters, great character work, and it was written I was amazed with some of with most of it. I mean, it's quite. I'm not going to say it's lyrical prose, but it's really good prose, really immersive. So I was delighted just being in this world, especially the 1998 one. So I liked the world of 1998, and I liked the characters of the 60s. So kind of the combination of the two. And yeah, I read it very slowly, because I had to read it slowly because again, like I said, a lot of it was beyond me. But I found it very enjoyable all the way through. I laughed, I almost cried, I thought about things. Yeah, brilliant, masterwork, no complaints.
Yeah, I agree. I liked what you said about where the science and the fiction begins, because that was to me, that's a draw, because I don't need to know the exact science of some of this stuff, but when he weaves it in such a way that it feels like part of the story, and you don't know where the fiction's coming in, and it's kind of just blending all together. And I thought he did a great job at doing that. And I know you look at his biography, he is a professor of physics, and that makes perfect sense when you're reading this story. There's a lot of physics in here that he explains, and a lot of it went over my head as well, but it wasn't in an intimidating way. It was in a kind of in a teaching way, like he's a professor anyway, so it kind of makes sense. And he blended it in with the story very well, I thought, so that you really got to know the characters. What I liked what he did was this is a bunch of scientists sitting around talking about physics in this book,
and it was still entertaining.
Yeah, and it wasn't boring that all these scientists were sitting around talking about physics. You actually got to know them. You got to know their lives. You got to know their what they're dealing with in their personal lives and in their professional lives, like the politics of their workplace and even the politics of some of the politics, like involved with releasing papers and all that stuff. It was pretty interesting, and I would have thought that would be the most boring thing in the world to read about, but his character work made it very palatable and very easy to get into. Like you said, his prose is easy going. It's not so technical that it bogs down in anything, and there were even a few lyrical passages here and there that were pretty nice. And so it was a good read. I liked it. I enjoyed it immensely. I read it actually quite quickly, considering the size of it. And I wouldn't do that with a technical manual. So. Who are you, Layla?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll go next. Overall I did like it. I liked the ending. I liked the twist. There's a couple of twists in there. Kennedy was one, just the way that was handled. I was saying before we started, I did have to start over because I was reading too quickly for what was being given. So I got mixed up between the timelines at first, as to which scientist was in which timeline. But once I got that figured out, I did really appreciate the concepts. And like Susanna was saying, just sitting back and kind of thinking about things, especially in conjunction with Jared, like you were saying about the politics, because back about that time, I remember reading that a new theory emerged about that time. I can't remember now if it was string theory or something, back in the 60s, but the theorist was essentially, run out of town, essentially. And now it's one of our, primary theoretical theories, as far as I know. Maybe it's passé by now too, but so I really kind of thought about that as I was reading it too, how, that was supposedly a pivotal time for physics, and I wondered if he was, sort of alluding to that in some way, that people, any new idea, a an institution that is well respected and kind of calcified at the same time, would probably reject something new, something that would be, helpful. So I thought that aspect of it was good. I did kind of feel that because of all of the conversation, I still felt like there was some more room for just a little more exploration of the characters, especially I forget his name, but the character who was like on the make constantly to sleep with like every woman in his vicinity.
Peterson.
Peterson, that's right. It's like, I'd like to know a little more about Peterson's, psychological motivations here. But or maybe he just thought very well of himself. So that sometimes I found myself wishing for more on that, in that regard, because of all of the conversation. I think it would have given a little more emotional depth. But then, last thing I'll say, I think that the character I most enjoyed coming back to was Marjorie, Renfro's wife, because she was like pulling rabbits out of her hat, trying to survive. But she had her complexities, because I think she was the one that was kind of, rude to the homeless people. I mean, that's something to discuss. I guess when you come down to survival, being rude to people without, those are things to discuss. But overall, she was really my favorite character out of the story. But I did enjoy all the characters, so for different reasons.
And Chris?
He may be frozen.
Oh, okay. Then
Oh.
I'll go. Damn, I couldn't have told. But so I can go next. I think I sort of concur with most things that have been said. So just for some like additional context maybe about this book, we just finished Revelation Space for Speculative Speculations, which is another book by hard sci-fi book by an astrophysicist. And I mean, I love that book overall, but there were many parts that felt dry or like stunted dialogue to me, or whatever. So I kind of went into this book knowing that the author was an astrophysicist, expecting almost something like that. Revelation Space is not by any means a book I dislike. It's just there were parts of it that I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. So this one also had parts like that, but not for the same reasons. That this was more because there were character interactions that I didn't appreciate, like with Peterson. Why the hell was he able to sleep with every married woman he met? Anyway, so so this book read almost like a contemporary or literary fiction book with sci-fi elements thrown in, just because of the number of detours it took in sort of contemplating life and times. I think we got a lot of that from Peterson's perspective, and maybe he was a good character to do that from. Also from Marjorie, like you said, Layla, I think we got a lot of sort of the world building was done through some characters about just the state of affairs in 1998 and how bad things were. The scientists mostly just did their thing, and then the other people, we were used to build out the world, I think, and that was interesting to me. And a lot of the dialogue felt very real, and yeah, it didn't read the way Revelations spaced it for what it is and who it's authored by. That said, I have to bring up that there is a little bit of an acknowledgement note at the end of the book in which he credits his sister-in-law, Marjorie, no, not Marjorie, sorry, Hilary Benford, for the character uh, stuff in the book. He says it would have been a very different book if it wasn't for her. I don't know if she helped him with all his books. I'd be curious to compare the influence that she had on his characters versus other books. But I really dug the science part of it. I think at some point, Jared, you told me that I would enjoy this book when you were reading it, and I hadn't started it yet. You were not wrong at all. I loved the science explanations. There were some things that sent me chasing down rat holes. Definitely going to look up that Wheeler-Feynman theory that they mentioned, and or I started to but couldn't find the original paper. I'm going to go digging for it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book overall. The only complaint, if I have any, is that I did not like seeing the women from the eyes of the male characters. And I don't think it's strictly the book or the author being sexist in that way. I think it's he's writing about these characters like Peterson, I think is meant to be somewhat despicable in that area, especially given the way some of the women talk about him, about how he hates women, and that's why he wants to sort of subdue them. But yeah, so I did not. I like being in the women's perspective, but I think we only got that one with Marjorie, and even that one felt a little shaky because she was immediately attracted to Peterson for whatever reason. But the seeing the women from the eyes of the men wasn't great. But everything else, I pretty much enjoyed. And like, just I'm also a little shaky about the ending, but we'll talk about that. It's too soon. What about you, Chris? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it overall. I think there's a lot to like about it for all of the reasons that everybody sort of outlined beforehand. For me, it's like part love letter to physics academia, part savage takedown of physics academia, and then this weird soap opera stuff that sits alongside it in the rest of the book in terms of the relationships, etc., that is going on. And there were many points in the book I was reading. I was like really, really like this section, like some of the interactions between Penny and can I remember who's with who? That's one of the other points.
Gordon.
Like, Gordon. I was going to say Gordon, but I didn't want to be wrong. But yeah, Penny and Gordon. Is that everybody had a partner, and the women sort of meshed into one in terms of like. In terms of their impact on the lives, not necessarily the characters were all the same, but actually the impact on the male characters that they were with. It sort of felt like they sort of meshed into one in terms of that. Or the section with Cooper with Gordon and the trial and the test that he was going to get through. But those were kind of sections I felt that kind of sat outside what the main narrative of the book was for me, if you know what I mean. The main storyline that came trucking along, these were kind of asides that happened, and they were almost like episodes of a TV series, if you know what I mean, that explored this like separate bit without really pushing the story forward in its own way. But I actually really liked the ending, actually. Funny enough, unfortunately, when we get to that, was actually my favorite part. I think by the time it came around to the end, I think the story really coalesced and kind of made an awful lot of sense. That because I did have a frustration with some of the science, with some of the things that they were coming on, and the things that they were putting up as roadblocks and things they couldn't get past. I did not necessarily see those as being massive issues, aside from the fact that there were these personalities in 1963 or whatever that people couldn't get through, which I think is his takedown of academia at that time. But the ending I did like. I sort of I have problems with the fact that actually the major reason for them starting to send the messages back, you didn't see the impact until towards the end of the book. if you know what I mean. You know exactly the problems that caused. I actually think it would have helped the book a lot if we had had some of the after effects towards the start of the book. You know, the dying and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like the stakes could have been raised, and it made an awful lot more sense in that way if we had it at the start. But overall, like a really enjoyable book, and I did like the fact that it's very dialogue heavy, made it very easy to read. There was lots of characters in it. I think differentiating between them was a bit difficult at times. But like Leila had said, actually, when she went back to the start to reread and about timelines, because I was doing a mix of audiobook. It's almost impossible to do an audiobook because of the multiple timelines at the start. So I had to go back to just reading on the page. But yeah, good book.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that it was very, very subtle change that at the time how the timeline was affected. I actually enjoyed that because I didn't want to see this hit me over the head big obvious timeline changes here and now we're doing something different. I was kind of like I was enjoying the process of trying to figure out what was different. And I think every once in a while he threw this little hint at us, like a character would say, um, "Oh, I didn't remember reading about that," and it just made me stop and go, "Wait a minute." Because then somebody else would say, "Oh, don't you remember? It was in the papers. It was this, and I was like, "Oh, why is that? Why didn't that character remember reading about that?" And it was just little stuff like that sprinkled throughout the whole book that kept popping up, and I got a few of them tabbed here, but I can't find them now. But the and that just kept happening, and I was just like, "Oh, I was like, that's a hint. There's something there." And I'm sure if I went back through the book and really scoured it, I'd be like, yep, that was definitely something that was like, that's different. And I really enjoyed that part of it. Yeah.
Paradox was not paradoxing. Yeah.
I think I agreed that I also liked the slow build up of the bad things that happened because it made me think of Interstellar, where things keep deteriorating and then they swoop in and have a final solution that changes the world after they get the message. Here the answer was very different, but there still kept being hope for this universe to have a solution to their problems. They didn't, but it kept that open, and that's why the ending was a twist, and worked well, I think, from a narrative point of view, not from an expectation point of view for me. But
a little aside, and this is just me speculating. Do you think maybe perhaps Stephen King got some inspiration from this for his what's the name of the book? The 22nd 11 of 63, about the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, that 11/22/63.
Right.
Yeah, 11/22. I always put it the other way around because I'm European.
I was wondering that too.
It kind of when I got to the end, because that it made such a point about it. And it's like, I wonder if there was something there, or it's just a big event and writers are just speaking on it. But there was something that kind of made me go, maybe. Another thing I liked is
sorry,
go ahead. Gerald was saying that not much changed. So the book was written in 1980, and so I think he went back to 63 and then to 98. It's kind of the same amount of time, and me speculating that he maybe not a lot had changed from the 60s to 1980. So he figured, it's just going to stay the same. So it wasn't, even though it's science fiction, he wasn't too concerned about technological evolution. It was just, it didn't think that academia would evolve that much. Probably didn't. I don't know much about academia, but I have the impression that probably did not that much in terms of just the process itself, never mind the rest. So there's that. Even though it was science fiction, there was not a lot of that sort of science fiction, and you imagine different technologies, a different life, different. That was not what it was about.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I like that bit.
On the Kennedy assassination again, I did wonder why we spent so many pages on sort of recapping the, I guess, news report. It wasn't even how it impacted the characters. Layla, you said there was a twist there. I'm not too familiar with that history. What was something different in the assassination here?
Yeah, in this case, the shooter essentially missed because a physics teacher had sent his student to the place where, the shooter was and distracted the shooter, essentially. So that meant that Kennedy did not die. And I was thinking of that too, knowing that the book was written in 1980, Susanna. I just wonder how much, the author was still, there was, even now, there's pondering of what if Kennedy had lived, what would we have been in Vietnam? Would we have done this or that? And it's even cycled back around in our politics now, because they've released more files. So I just thought it was interesting that he focused in on that and on the climate, versus any other type of technological issue. Although I guess 1980 was right before all the Microsoft stuff, or Apple stuff started, really came out. I also, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish off.
No, and also just want to say also within that same timeline, I think we're still in that, in regard to how women are written. I feel like there's a template, for a lot of these books where the women are still sort of, on the sideline. And I feel like I want to make a connection back to War of the Worlds, when the main character essentially parks his wife with his cousin and then goes on a walkabout, takes a little tour of the country while aliens are invading. And so, but that was the times, and there's new types of character development now. But I still feel like he did represent, in maybe through the male gaze, as they say, who women were at that time. There was the rich surfer girl, and even though Marjorie's in the future, Marjorie's more of a trad wife, as they say, and it's so interesting that Marjorie is sort of, in a sense, the more traditional of the women represented, except the mother in New York, who is also an archetype of her own, I think,
the Jewish mother archetype,
They all had, I wouldn't say secondary roles, because they had, but they were supporting roles. They were there to support the male characters. Yes, all of them, they were there to help the male characters either develop the work or develop themselves. That was a pattern, but they were quite different. They had their own inner lives and their own struggles. So I didn't think they were two-dimensional. The focus was just not on them, just on what they provided to their respective partner. And it's a choice, I guess.
Yeah. I actually think Penny put her foot down quite nicely. I thought she was pretty well developed. And and he also had a character at the end there where it was another female scientist
Marcia,
who what's his name had to reach out to get help, and was it Gordon had to reach out to get help?
Oh yes. The Zinnis,
It was.
Claudia Zinnis.
Claudia, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what his name. Yeah, and
I think it
so
was the future group.
was it the
Gordon
future
was.
group. I think I could. Yeah, and so so he did include other peripheral female characters that weren't part of the group, and so I don't know. I really liked the character work. I thought I really liked the parts with Penny, between Penny and Gordon, and I thought their arguments were pretty well done when he was so focused on his nothing but his work and to the neglect of everything else. And I thought she brought that out of him eventually. And I liked the way they kind of hashed it out and worked it out. And I thought that was very interesting. And I thought there was some pretty good character work there. Peterson, of course, is the CAD, and he but even he had some character moments at the end when he went to his farm and the world was becoming more dystopian, and he actually had some deeper thoughts than just chasing tail. And so it was I thought even that part was pretty well done, where you started to actually see more of his character than just what was presented originally. And so that was neat. And I really think it was neat that Benford chose such a close future to when he wrote the book for this environmental disaster to start happening. It seems like it was something that was really on his mind, that he was worried about. And so I thought that choosing 1998 was pretty interesting on his part, for all this to happen, where they would be desperate enough to send these messages to the past.
Wasn't it around that time that people start talking more about climate change? Wasn't late 70s, early 80s?
Sure. Yeah. Because that was soon after the EPA was created. And so it was only like 8 years or so after the EPA was created. So it was definitely a hot topic once Superfund sites started popping up to clean the ground and clean the groundwater during this time. And so yeah, it was definitely on the public mind, and there were some public policies put in place to start doing something about it. And so I think he captured that and said, if maybe he thought we needed to do more, and he projected out what not doing more would do to the planet, or do to the society.
There are a couple of other pop culture, popular time, fictions. One was, I think it was more like a late 60s show called Time Tunnel. Does anyone remember that?
No.
I was obsessed with Time Tunnel when I was like late 70s. And then A Wrinkle in Time, of course. So I think that there was sort of that sense, people are starting to develop that sense of, other dimensions and what ifs, and maybe him as a physicist even more so. So I'm going to look up Time Tunnel now, come to think of it. Go back and live through some of my time.
I think they actually predicted Netflix in here, because he mentioned people watching that stuff at home electronically, and movie theaters would die. And he mentioned that page 137 of my book. But I was like,
I missed that.
He's talking about Netflix.
Interesting. Maybe he was a shareholder at that early stage. He's just planting the seeds through popular culture into books at that stage. Yeah. The big, I don't know about anybody else, but and it is referred to quite a lot through the book. There's a lot of discussion about paradoxes throughout the entire book, and about the effect of a paradox, and the fact that as long as you didn't create a paradox, then these messages should be okay. And it really bothered me through the entire book that obviously everything that was happened couldn't have happened to satisfaction, because they would have already seen the outworkings of that in some way, which is why I like the end of it kind of so much, because it did give a reason that multiple things could have happened, and I thought it was very nicely explained through the Kennedy part as well, in terms of like using, rather than just kind of talking about it in scientific language, they give an identifiable kind of popular culture kind of event that they could send it around and actually see how that all played out very differently. But it did bother me a whole lot throughout the reading of the book, because it was like what's the point? We know nothing happened here. We know nothing actually happened. In fact, the biggest resolution I think we got is when they got the message through about the safety deposit box, to make it out in that person's name. And you went, oh, right, there's an actual something that you can manifest and see in time that will come out forward through that. So that those bit that, like I say, as I got towards the end of the book and I started to explain some of the things that I was generally frustrated about and reading about it because of myself, and my reading of it, I was like, well, actually, this is actually very nicely done. This actually has a very satisfying ending, when I was convinced for the majority of the book that I was just going to swim into a sea of frustration.
Yeah, no, I thought that again, like I said in the beginning, that I wasn't clever enough. What am I missing? What is going on here? Because it started quite strong. Just the whole idea of, to travel back in time. You actually have to go back in space to find a place where Earth was in that specific moment. And I was like, okay, my brain is going to explode now, because don't do this to me. Don't even try to explain that. But it makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course time it has to go back in space. And then it went on the explanation, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a DNF. But then it was this mystery. I was just trying to understand why is the narrative that was so compelling, the narrative, but it wasn't adding up, and I was really immersed trying to figure that one out, and say, okay, maybe I'm not clever enough. And if it wasn't for the characters, again, because I got so invested in their personal lives, because if it was just the science, I probably would have given up, because things were not making sense until, about a quarter, like the last 50 pages, when it kind of starts making sense for me. And but I was invested in the characters, and I think that was really brilliant, because otherwise, if it was just the characters, it would be a kind of meh soap opera. There was nothing really groundbreaking between their relationships. They were good, but there were nothing we haven't seen before. But
sure.
Everything together, genius.
Yeah, I did like the ending for all the setup that went into it, like all the discussion about pocket universes, which maybe aren't really pocket universes, but like sort of split off universes from the various time loops. I think for me, I like and appreciate the ending. It's just I was slightly disappointed that the explanation was we split off into another universe and things didn't change, because that is sort of I don't know if this is one of the early time travel ish books that dealt with time travel by splitting off parallel universes, or if other books did it before that. But that's sort of like the default now. Anybody who writes a time travel story will say parallel universes most of the time, and that's just supposed to make sense. But given the amount of discussion that went into paradoxes and sending a message back without creating problems, I thought we'd get a resolution in world, not in a parallel world. But we didn't, and that's okay. That's sort of like a my expectation problem. But I do have some other issues with it though. Like, it's trying to be really rigorous with the dealing of the time loops and paradoxes. But then it did, I think, what other books do, in that something different happened, and that's why the world didn't go bad. And so we sort of completely split off from the creation of the loop. Maybe there's an explanation there. So one idea I had was, so the loop is, it it needs to be so that they don't even have to send the message, right? But it it's usually the thing that you do. That's what they were postulating. Maybe the later event is fine too. But so if it is the thing that they did to stop it, then it's a loop, right?
Mm.
If it's not, then you've just sort of split off. It's no longer a loop. So the explanation that uh, only loops create pocket universes, that doesn't really make sense to me anymore. Now we're just sort of in the quantum mechanics. Every decision you make splits off in the splits off parallel universes realm, not this very specific category of time. What's the word I'm looking for? Paradoxes that split off pocket universe, if that makes sense. So it's not that there was a specific like series of events that split off. It's that like just different things happen in this world altogether, which I'm having trouble digesting. It probably makes sense if I sit down and think about it, but right this moment it doesn't feel like it's adhering to the theory.
Well, it wasn't a paradox, Vasha, until you observed it. Then it became a paradox.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
I think that's the answer, because I actually found at the end, I liked the end. But I realized, okay, this is me accepting that this is a closed universe of a book where, there's one past, you can go back and change it, and not really think in terms of, not that I know that much about quantum theory anyway, but, not really bring that into this story, because otherwise you could just think, well, yeah, we're just looking at whatever change that we're seeing in the final part of the book. It's just that we've decided to peek into a different dimension, and somewhere there's still a dimension where there's still a place where the algae bloom is destroying the world. So was it really saved or not, if you're going to start getting, in all these wild concepts? But for the book, I think the framework, if you accept the framework the writer was giving us, like one past, one future, once you change the past, you change the future, I think it was still a good book. It doesn't have to be totally scientifically accurate, but those are just some thoughts I had. So mind blowing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, when you're writing time travel, you're always going to run into problems, especially time traveling to the past. I think the only story that managed to somewhat completely solve the paradox was Dark, because it was genius, but they had to add a lot of fantasy into it. They didn't explain the time travel exactly. They just, oh yeah, magic box, here we go. But thematically, in terms of plot, they kind of managed to solve. Trying to do both, I don't know of any story that can pull it off. This one came pretty close as well. So there goes.
I feel like, Behold the Man has that time travel element, and I did kind of appreciate that it gave a realistic expectation of, there's the there's a history we all know, there's a story we all know, but yet there were just subtle details, that subtle variations in that story depicting that time. Um, so, I don't discount any time travel story, because I think they all just lead us to think a little more just about what it all really means.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I really like how when the scientists in the 50s were getting signals that they couldn't explain. I really like the process of them trying to explain it, trying to figure it out, trying to they went all the way from just electronic equipment messing up to actually getting a signal from another planet. And it was really interesting to me how they would they would jump there, and it was like I could see how it'd be frustrating that people who because we know as a reader know it's from the future, but they don't. And I like how Benford kept it to the fact that it took them a really long time to figure out where these signals were coming from, because it's just too fanciful. It's just too far of a reach and a stretch to think that there would actually be possible for signals from the future that come back like that. And so I just like the whole process of them going through these motions, and how at times it just seemed like a lost cause, because Gordon wasn't getting the support, and he was he was getting a run around from some people, and some people were trying to take advantage of what he found and get a little stardom out of it and what have you. And so I would think that was really clever on Benford's part, to the way he presented all that stuff, and I thought it was pretty subtle. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, but think about it. They had absolutely no reason to believe or think that it was from the future. Whenever you look into space, we always looking at the past or listening to things from the past. And I love the whole idea, which never occurred to me. There's many things here that never occurred to me, that to send a signal to the past. It's all well and good, but you need to have a receiver in the past. And how are you gonna how do you gonna build a receiver if you don't know you're getting a message from the future? Seriously.
Yeah, and I loved how he tackled that. I love how
my brain, quite the exercise.
Yeah, how the scientists in the future would have to target something they know would receive it already. Like that was pretty cool. I thought that was
yeah. And of course, those in the past will be like, oh, we received something, far away, far from the past. It would never, the fact that it would not occur to them, but it did it so well. I think if someone in the team would be like, oh, maybe it's from the future, and like immediately, if this was one Hollywood movie blockbuster, there would be someone in the room going, oh, it's probably from the future. No, it would never cross their mind.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That was really well done. That's why it took them so long.
That's why he won an award.
Yeah.
Oh, it did? What award did it win? The Hugo?
Prize the Fermi
Nebula.
Oh, you mean
no, but I didn't mean the I meant the guy in the story. Sorry, what he meant. Gordon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was one of those cases where you know the answer, but the process of getting there was so well done. I really enjoyed those bits too. I think the past thread was my favorite part. Like those read so quickly. And the future was great too when they were sending out messages. The characters' musings, I could have done without. So, I guess there was one character we haven't talked about yet. What about Markham and the way he died? And I think there was some excellent foreshadowing of sorts of what the final conclusion is going to be with what Markham thinks just before he dies. The many worlds thing that he thinks just before. And I love the process he used to get there. So we sort of got these interruptions, not just for Markham. I think there were other people too who would be in the middle of a thought process and they'd get interrupted, and it's like like that's edge of the seat stuff if you're watching a gripping movie and then someone comes and hits the pause button in the middle of a really gripping scene. But yeah, those scenes were, I thought, also very well done. Yeah. Anything else to add about Markham as a character or his
I remember
interactions?
Toward the end, Markham's the one that died in the plane crash, right?
Yeah.
So toward the end, there's isn't it Gordon that sees him or hears about him?
Yeah, sees him at some meetup.
Yeah. But it's kind of left open, isn't it, as to whether Markham will again die in the plane crash?
Well, it's not necessarily open. It's the fact that this time is split. So the actions of whatever happens in this universe, it was pointless to warn him because it would just create another timeline. Essentially, at that stage, if you do it, so at that point, let events just play out. I think again, one of the really nice things I took away from that part of the story, Leila, was the fact that actually, just because you can influence thing, he was never ever going to save all Markhams. So at that point, what was the point?
That's right.
And I really like that. I really like that kind of analysis that he came away with.
I know. I was like, go up to him and talk to him and tell him all this. And
I was at the start as well, Jared. Like, and then it was reasoned through, and I was like, okay, that's very good.
Reasoned through it. It was like, maybe not. Yeah.
I did think that was a lovely moment, though, when he recognized the name that he heard that he got in the transmission, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? These are the people that I mean, it was almost I need to give them credit for what happened to me thing, except they weren't the ones who sent the messages back. So the other thing that I wonder if it caused the time loop is that somebody else discovered tachyons in the Renfrew and Markham world that sends the messages. But in this past, Gordon is the one who discovered them, essentially, or proved their existence. So that also has to have an impact on everything.
Yeah. That is, again, a paradox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was...
Why did you observe that, Basha? That just...
Paradoxes don't exist until we observe them.
But those particles always did. It's not that they discovered them and invented them. They just kind of were able to categorize them, so it's less of a big issue in terms of like who did it. It's historical certainty that they're going to be discovered their uses of and being able to use them, produce them. So it's just its own thing. It's just the fact that them sending the signal back to Gordon led to him discovering them in his timeline before somebody else did it in another stage. But again, it did. I was reading, it did annoy me for a time, and then I kind of, again, like an awful lot of these kind of books that have this kind of science and physics, even in my limited understanding, I get annoyed with it, going, that's absolutely ruined the book for me. And then, but actually, when I work through it, it can still make sense, and I can kind of learn to live with it.
I got a bit alarmed when we introduced the idea of the message coming from the future, and I was like, no, I can't, no more. Save that for the sequel. To try to explain. Don't you tell me that now everything happened because there's some scientists in the year 2200 and something. Don't do that. So we actually
Yeah,
it
that's
ended
right.
up,
Yeah.
on the right spot.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool though when we went up to that last chapter and it said 1974. I was like, oh wait a minute, because it was then at that point that I realized that people in 53 might still be alive, possibly when 98 approaches, and that I was like, oh wait, these people actually could meet. These
Yeah.
characters we've been reading in so separately in their separate boxes for all this time. There is actually a possibility that s- older these older 53 people could meet younger 98 people, and that's pretty. That's kind of what happened at the conference there
Yeah.
when he saw Markham, and I was just like, oh, that's actually pretty neat. And that made me interested to read the chapter more because I was like, is that going to happen? How's this going to happen? And what's going to be the result of something like that happening? And
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that last chapter just for that speculation.
Mm.
Yeah. I had one more thing that I wanted to bring up, but I forgot what it was. Never mind.
Was it Gordon? Gordon ended up in the new timeline. Gordon had divorced Penny, or Penny had divorced Gordon. Did I read that correctly?
At the end,
I
I had to go back to a different mic. I was like, did I read this correct? So I think so. I think.
Yeah, Gordon met somebody else around
Yeah.
68, 69, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I thought there was one different between the two timelines, or were they?
He mentioned he was still with Penny up until the 1960s, the late 60s.
Yeah, they had the kids.
Right.
I just think he was turning into Peterson at that stage. To be perfectly honest, I just kind of got the idea that
Yeah.
that
There was like
she
a
was at
glitch.
home.
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
it wasn't explained. It was one of those things. Okay, what just happened here? Yeah.
Hmm.
because it was
Yeah,
quite
there
public.
was.
She kissed him in public, I think, didn't she, Marcia, when she came up
Mm-hmm.
and sing him? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an explanation that he divorced her in 69 or something and then met Marsha
Yeah.
shortly
Mm-hmm.
after.
Yep.
So she's who he's married to now, but I didn't think it was different in the two timelines. I thought that was just this timeline. That's just what happened here. It, maybe I misread that. There's a
That's
lot you could miss in this.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to look through my notes and
Yeah, I'm looking.
yeah. Any other topics or thoughts? I think we've covered most of the things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Good book. All told.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. It's a good book.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it quite a lot.
Is there any other Benford in the?
Yeah, I was gonna look that up. I opened the Masterworks page again, trying to see if
Loads
there's
of
more.
stuff.
Damn, this is the only one in the series. Yeah, he has written quite a lot. I will put them on the speculative speculations. But
The titles are awesome. Again, my TBR suffers.
yeah.
Oh, and he's an editor too. Oh gosh.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's been prolific. That is very cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we will see everybody next month with More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon.
Okay.
And the books for the next 2 months after that are going to be Man Plus by Frederick Bowl and A Case of Conscience by James Blish. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.